Hello and welcome to episode 25 of Coffee Talk. My name is Trevor Hooth. I am joined, as always, by Nate Kosher. Nate, can you believe it? 25 episodes.
I cannot believe it. We were just talking before the show started. Only 3 more Mondays of the regular season, so yeah, it's come really quick.
It's crazy. Mondays are significant because that's when we record, so that makes it the most important day of the baseball week because Coffee Talk is being recorded on Mondays. I assume
So
that's why you pulled Mondays out, Nate.
exactly, yes, yes. The only good reason uh, that we're talking about a Monday, otherwise, no one likes Mondays.
Garfield certainly doesn't.
No,
I
he
tried to
doesn't.
get you. He just took a drink. I thought I was going to get him to spit it out. All right,
No, he
we're
doesn't.
going to talk baseball now. And actually, well, before we get there, Nate, there's one new thing to Coffee Talk here, and people might be seeing our faces pretty soon. We might get some things clipped up. So, wave to the people, Nate. Hello, it's good to see you. This is what we look like.
Yes.
Hopefully, you still like our baseball content. But that's going to be a cool thing coming. I think there's more to it, but as of right now, that's what we got going on. Baseball
I let,
in the baseball world, Nate. Um,
let's do it.
t- Tonight, even as we're recording this, again, we just mentioned we record on Mondays. Rob Refsnyder and Tyler O'Neill for the Boston Red Sox went back to back home runs twice in a game.
So combined 4 home runs.
Yes,
Wow.
two separate
I
occasions they went back to back.
I don't know if I'm sure that's happened before, but I don't ever remember hearing that.
Yeah, that
That's
seemed really
insane.
strange to me. There's not a whole lot to talk about around it necessarily, but that's just super interesting that's happened in baseball.
One time I went to a game a long time ago, a Milwaukee Brewers game, and I believe they went back to back to back to back, four in a row. Um, that's the best I've ever seen. But back to
Mhm.
back twice would be pretty hard to do because you think the pitcher would adjust. Might be a different pitcher, but you think they would adjust their approach when both the guys have just gone yard.
Yeah, what are the odds? I mean, even down to that, like, what are the odds two guys have multi home run games? What are the odds that those two guys are going to be hitting, back to back in a lineup? What are the odds that those home runs are going to come in the same inning? It's just there's a lot that has to go right for that to happen, and I mean that's why it's a cliche, but that's why you love baseball, man. There's just so much that can happen that you just see something new all the time.
Yeah, it's crazy. And I mean, I guess O'Neill's having a pretty nice season, but they're not. Those are not two like sluggers. It's not like Aaron Judge and Giancarlo Stanton went back to back. It's not like people we'd expect to hit a
Right.
bunch
It's
of
not
home
the
runs.
known sluggers,
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
the known high exit velocity people. That's true. One of those known high exit velocity people, this is really interesting, right? I find it very interesting. Dating back to August 9th. So that is 1 month from today that we're recording. Bryce Harper, 26 games. He's slashing 313, 389, 427, 8 RBIs, 12 or 11 doubles, zero home runs, but still worth a 132 WRC plus. Taking those numbers from a tweet from The Good Fight. You can find them at The Good Fight, fight with a PH. Make sure to check them out. They do some good Phillies related content. But I saw that tweet, saw those numbers, and there's a couple things that stuck out to me with that, Nate. The first being Bryce Harper hasn't hit a home run in a month.
Yeah,
The second among them being Bryce Harper doesn't have his home run power right now, but is still worth 132 WRC plus and still getting the job done in other ways.
yeah. It's interesting because he was hot. Earlier in the season, I think before the All Star break, he started out pretty well. And he's one of those players who's banged up quite a bit. So I wouldn't be surprised if he has some sort of injury underlying this, but still great numbers, still someone you want in your lineup, a leader for the Phillies, obviously. Um, but I see here it's the second longest stretch of his career, and you'd hope he would get healthy for the playoffs if you're a Phillies fan.
Second longest stretch of his career is also good news because that means the first longest stretch ended at some point.
That's
So that
right.
means this one likely will end at some point as well.
And his cumulative numbers for the year, I mean, still pretty good. He has
Mhm.
26 home runs, 79 ribbies, and he's hitting his normal close to 300, 285 with 373 on base percentage. So, other than this, I mean, cold stretch, I don't think it's any reason for concern. Just kind of an odd
But is it a
ebb and
cold stretch? That's what I
well,
mean.
true,
It's
yeah. Not necessarily.
he's still hitting the ball really well. He just isn't hitting the ball over the fence. So I mean,
You're
can
right.
you even call it a cold stretch? But
I don't No, you're
based on
right.
the
I don't
player
think
he
you
is, I
can.
think there's an argument for it. But based on baseball stats, I don't know that there is.
It's not like he is in a funk where they
Mhm.
need to bench him, but it's not what you expect from Harper.
Right. And more weird baseball things. Weird baseball things. I don't know. I repeated it. So that's one weird thing that's been going on. Um, Luis Severino.
Yes.
He's another very interesting case happening this year. An incredible bounce back season and has continued his good pitching as of late. And it's, I mean, speaking of a guy who's had injuries just ravage his career, he was supposed to be the next big thing for the Yankees until things kind of got derailed by injuries. He finds himself with the Mets this year, and all of a sudden, I mean, he added another great outing in his most recent one, where he went 6.2 innings, gave up 5 hits, 1 earned run, and struck out 8. It's just been a stretch of great games for him. He's now up to 144 strikeouts through 166 innings with a 3.74 ERA, and that's much better than I think Nate almost anybody would have guessed.
Yeah, I know before the season he was, I think, a popular bounce back candidate just because he was getting a fresh start with the Mets. I think people were thinking he still had something left in the tank, but his career year that you were referencing, 2018, he went 19 and 8. Then he basically had like 5 years where he didn't do much. 3 years where he didn't really do anything at all. He pitched in 3 games. 2020 didn't play during the pandemic. 2021 pitched in 4 games, and then over the last 2 years he made 19 starts. But basically didn't have a full season in like 5 years, and
Mhm.
so it was hard to tell if what he was going to do. But yeah, he's looked good. He kind of rediscovered his old stuff. He had a complete game shutout too, not too long ago, a few weeks back. So yeah, good for him. I've always kind of liked him, kind of a sneaky fantasy guy.
Yeah, he always had that potential. That was back August 17th. Was that complete game shutout against the Miami Marlins offense? So,
So yeah, there's that.
all right. So this, I had a question for you. I meant to ask him. We were talking about Bryce Harper. This has nothing to do with Luis Severino. From like, let's just say the recent era of baseball. We're not talking all time, but just from present day. You can maybe reach back a little bit. Who would you say is the most underrated player in baseball, in fantasy, just continually performs, doesn't get talked about? Who's like, when you think underrated, who's the player that comes to your mind?
Hmm, interesting. Um, let's set a time frame. When would you say the time
All right,
frame?
let's do parameters.
Yeah, I mean,
You know what?
otherwise, I don't know if I can answer
Let's
that
call
one.
it simple. Let's say active baseball players who,
Active baseball
if you
players.
think
Okay.
underrated, which players come to your mind? I think there's definitely two, maybe a third that come to my head.
Boy, this is hard. Um, okay, well, that's kind of a cheating answer. Um,
It's an open-ended question. I don't know if there's a cheating
yeah.
answer.
Well, uh, we you talk about the Tigers, I talk about the Diamondbacks.
That's
I
true.
will say Ketel Marte is underrated.
Okay.
Um, the guy, I mean, he's been an all-star. He started the all-star game this year. I think he's been an all-star twice, and that doesn't. So obviously he's a good player, but I still think he's underrated. It doesn't totally capture the full picture. He's like the heart and soul of the Diamondbacks. He's been there for a long time, and the guy just rakes. If you look back over the past 5 to 7 years, he did have a couple down years, but this year, 30 home runs, 81 ribbies, hitting 293. I don't feel like people talk about him enough. That would be the one that comes to mind.
Okay. All right.
I'm gonna keep thinking while you give me yours. See if
So
I can think of
I mean,
another one.
I guess I don't want to cheat. There's three guys that come to my mind whenever I think of underrated players, though. Ketel Marte is not one of them. That's a great answer. I wouldn't have thought of that. Um, I think it's quite obvious. Bryce Harper is one of them because that's who started this conversation in my head. Right? I
Yeah,
never think that Bryce Harper gets the credit that he's due for
I
the
agree.
player he is and has been. Um, the other one that could be my more problematic take is Francisco Lindor. I feel like he just doesn't get talked about for a guy who's been really good for a long time at just the entirety of baseball. It seems like.
He gets a bad rap.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Um,
you're right.
but I still don't know that I put him up there because for a long time for me it was Bryce Harper, who was that underrated player. But recently, I kind of think that I would die on a hill that the most underrated baseball player currently active is Jose Ramirez.
That just popped into my head when you
Mhm.
were saying Harper, and yeah, I was trying to think
Yeah,
of who else. That
J Ram. I mean,
Yeah, you're right.
it's got to be. It's got to be.
Yeah, he is not. I mean, once again, a guy who's been an all-star. I guess maybe plays in a smaller market, so people don't talk about him. But he is a stud, and year in and year out, unbelievable.
He has 34 home runs and 36 stolen bases this season. Is hitting 271. Would you have guessed that? I don't even think I knew he had a 30-30 season.
No, I didn't know that. I mean, he's always a speed power guy, but he's forgotten. Yeah, he's one of those guys who's forgotten about. Um, Not very flashy, but a
When you say a
stud.
speed power guy, his career numbers are almost exactly identically as 250 career home runs and 238 stolen bases on his career.
That's crazy. Yeah, a funny thing about him, once in my fantasy league, he was injured one year. This was a number of years ago. And I remember someone cut him loose. And as soon as I saw that, I put in a claim and someone else beat me. But that still hurts to this day because he was just sitting there available, and I couldn't make it happen. I saw him in a home run in the game I went to this year, earlier in August against the Diamondbacks. He did go yard, but it's not like there was like Ramirez jerseys everywhere, even in Cleveland.
Yeah, I mean it is a little crazy how much he's undervalued, and it's also crazy to think that this guy who's going what top. It's been so long since I've done redraft. I'm a dynasty guy. Top what 15 in every draft every year. Is that
Yeah,
fair? Is that a fair
fif-
number?
15 to 20. I mean,
Yeah.
he
So it's
plays
crazy to think
multiple
that that guy
positions.
is underrated, but that guy is underrated.
Yeah, it is. Same with Bryce Harper. I mean, everyone knows he's one of the most recognizable players, but I do think he's underrated. I agree with you.
Yeah. So just an interesting question. Are there any other guys that come to your mind?
No, someone who I was going to say, well, he is not anymore, but do you remember Eduardo Escobar?
Hmm.
He was on the Twins and he bounced around, uh, also a Diamondback, and then went to the Mets. That was a guy, I felt he was underrated. Could always put up some power numbers.
Do you know who my guy was? Not active anymore. It's been a while, actually. I've been playing fantasy baseball for way too long, considering how old I am. But back in the day, I used to draft him every year just because I felt like no one ever wanted him, and he added value to your team. Michael Young was my underrated
Yes,
with Texas. He was my underrated player, like when I first started doing fantasy baseball.
he was good. Heck of
Yeah,
a hitter. Yeah, that guy could hit.
yeah. So I got one more guy I want to talk about here before we take our first break, Nate. Otto Lopez with the Marlins. I don't know if we have talked about him before. He might have crossed the coffee talk table. Coffee table. Might have crossed the coffee
There we
table.
go. It was sitting right there.
It was planning our show live. Anyway, so he's been sitting. I don't know if he might have crossed the coffee table before, but he is since August 4th. So we're over a month now. Slashing 298, 356, 419, putting up 116 WRC plus.
Yeah, crazy. I I had actually never even heard of him until you sent me the little blurb when we were planning tonight, and he
Mhm.
wasn't even in the majors last year.
He was a Blue Jays prospect for a while, and then found his way to Miami. I can't remember how, but yeah, and he's just popped up and has just been hitting the ball. I mean, it's good to see. He was always he always kind of had that the top of the lineup type, you know,
Like a table setter.
table setter thing. That's what I was trying. The coffee table set. No, a table setter type profile,
Yeah,
even as a prospect, and that's kind of carrying over. I mean, it's 4 home runs, 16 stolen bases this year, but even on his crazy stretch, he's only hit 1 home run, right? So you're not getting a lot of power. You're kind of banking on average steals
the
out of
speed.
it.
Yep.
From a fantasy standpoint, that's not necessarily the most helpful thing, but um, when guys start hitting the ball, it's especially when they start hitting the ball that well, it's usually a good thing to just kind of bookmark the name, see what happens, how they finish the season, what kind of offseason workouts are they doing? Because maybe finds a little bit more power in the offseason, maybe, something like that. And he comes back with the ability to hit the ball like he is and a little bit more power. And all of a sudden, you might have a really good sleeper heading into your drafts next year.
Yeah, good on base percentage and um, potential multi-position eligibility too. With Baseball Reference lists him second, shortstop, and third. I was trying to find his starts this year on positions by start. Here, oh, here we go. I found it. So he started primarily at second base, but has started games at third, short, and has started 4 games in the outfield. So yeah, that's gonna be a name to watch going into next season. Um, it may be too late now to pick him up or make a move for him
It
this year.
it could be, but also I think he still depends on your league format, Nate.
Yeah,
Um, just
true.
because of the fact that he doesn't provide you a ton of power. He's not a guy that I would roster because for whatever reason, regardless of my format, I lean towards power and on base percentage, which is really dumb because I don't play in all OBP leagues. But I don't win leagues. I've said that many times, and I'll stick by it. But
You're
that's
not gonna
so
get the power output. No,
right, and that's
definitely.
my point. I just went on a tangent about how I'm a bad fantasy baseball player. But yes, Nate, thank you for summing up the point.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's sort of a maybe a Luis, another Marlin or ex Marlin, I guess now
Mhm.
Luis Arise profile.
Yeah. So just mildly interesting. Monitor, see what happens. If you're in a average league, he might be worth it just because he's helping your average lately. He may get you some steals if he is still available, but he's not a league changer. He's not going to be the guy you add down the stretch that wins you a championship. I don't think. But I think he could provide some value. When we come back, Nate, we are actually going to stay in Miami. Woo! Party town. Anyway, we're going to stay in Miami, talk about another one of their players. But right now, Nate, we're going to take a quick time out here on Coffee Talk. Coffee Talk, of course, part of the Pitcherless Podcast Network, where we are always ready for that next cup of coffee. And welcome back to Coffee Talk on the Pitcher List Podcast Network. My name is Trevor Hooth. I am joined by Nate Kosher. And it's always about this time I tend to remember that we haven't talked about Twitter handles. Nate, make sure to follow Mr. Nate Kosher at Nathaniel Kosher on Twitter. You can follow myself at Hooth Trevor. And of course, follow Coffee Talk at Coffee Talk PL so you can stay up to date on all things regarding our podcast and what Date and I think about day-to-day baseball things that happen. So we were talking about Otto Lopez in Miami. Another hitter in Miami is doing a lot of good things, and that's Connor Norby, who has been hitting home run after home run after home run after home run,
Yes.
and then he hit a bunch more home runs. And so, Nate, are you buying Connor Norby right now?
Yeah, that's a name I would buy. We've talked about him a few times, talked about him on the Orioles and, their embarrassment of riches with their prospects, but he is on fire right now, and I think he could be a fantasy difference maker down the road. And even, I mean, the rest of this year if you need power. I feel like fantasy leagues are probably in different places at this point. You might be in your playoffs or nearing your playoffs, depending on how your league works. But yeah, he's been on a tear, and good to see because he sort of got that fresh start. And the Marlins obviously give him the opportunity, and they have the space and the right situation where they can just throw out young talent and see what they have. Um, I think he's starting to figure it out.
I think so too, and he's super interesting. Um, he's got speed. He's really fast, which is not what you'd expect from a second baseman profile, but he's very fast. Um, he lifts the ball. He has some plus bat speed, according to MLB Pipeline's Twitter, after one of his home runs. So he has incredible
Hmm.
bat speed. Um, I don't know, man. There's a lot to like there. I mean, there's swing and miss involved. There's power. There's speed. It's a profile that I can see turning into amazing streaks followed by amazing cold streaks. I could see it very much turning into at the big league level. It wasn't necessarily leading up to the big league level, but I could see it at the major league level becoming like a Randy Arozarena, where he's going to be on fire and be one of the best players in the majors for a couple weeks, and then he's going to forget how to hit a baseball for a couple weeks.
I have a name for you. You've brought this up before. He could be the Jonathan India. So, another second baseman, some power, some steals, maybe a higher ceiling. Would you say, do you see that? Where he's kind of good, not excellent, but good across the board at different things?
I mean, so yeah, I mean that is what I've used Jonathan India for in the past. He's that guy that comes to mind for me when you think about the handful of average tools. On the five, with the five tools on the 2080 scale, they'd have a bunch of 50s, maybe a 45, maybe 55 sprinkled in.
Yes.
Um, I think that it makes some sense. I do think there might be a little bit more speed attached to that profile. Um, and I think the hit tool might not be as great. I think there's a few variances there off of what I would consider a general Jonathan India type player archetype.
Yep.
But I see what you're saying for sure. And you could be very well right, by the way. I mean, everything about him screams that Nate could be correct about this. I just see him more as that Christopher Morel, that Randy Arozarena, that guy who comes in and for a few weeks can just inject energy and inject, well, home runs, and
Yep.
then for a few
Hot
weeks
streak.
can't.
Yeah, I mean, he I think he still has that prestige and there's excitement there to see
Hmm.
what he could be. Um, Definitely keep your eye on him.
Yeah, for sure. Another prospect performance. I want to see if you are buying. This one is also pretty interesting. We're going to go to Detroit for it because we can't go that long without me bringing up a Tiger. That's one of the rules
That's
of the podcast.
that's right.
Um, Trey Sweeney, who they just acquired from the Dodgers as part of the Jack Flaherty trade, is now at the major league level. He is hitting 236. He's got 3 home runs, a pair of steals, and just to put it in perspective, he's catching fire a little bit as of late. Over his last 7 games, he's hitting 316 with 2 of those 3 home runs he's hit as a professional. So he's kind of hitting the ball a little bit better as of late. He's going to get plenty of time through the rest of the season. So to see what he is Trey Sweeney somebody that you, Nate, are interested in?
Well, he caught my eye yesterday. He went 4 for 4, also,
Mm-hmm.
including a home run. So I very much want to believe and say he's for real because I actually have him on my deep dynasty team. I got him in some sort of trade and that just been sitting in the minors till now he's up with the Tigers. I I don't think he's going to be the real deal. I remember we were talking about him a few weeks back, and you had said you saw him potentially as sort of a, like utility infielder type. I think was what your take was at that point, and I tend to agree with that. I don't think his raw skills are at that level where he's going to be a fantasy stud, but I'm actually surprised he's doing as well as he is as of late. I did not expect that.
Yeah, he's really ticked it up, and I did have him as more of a utility player on a division winning team. So if the Tigers are really turning it around, which they're, I mean,
That's fair.
not in it right now. I don't think they're going to make the playoffs, but they're not far away. I mean, they're playing pretty
They're
or
above
fairly meaningful
500, I
games. Yeah,
saw.
I mean, they're right there. But on a team that's going to win the division, a first division team, Trey Sweeney's not your starting shortstop. So I don't think that for the Tigers this is their long term answer. But as of right now, he's probably the best answer you have in house. Depending on how Bryce Rayner starts to develop, or that's a long way off if you think and you want to go sign somebody else. But you need to find another answer, I think, if you're getting ready to compete. Because right now you have Trey Sweeney, who overall is still hitting in the bottom half of the 200s,
Yep.
handful of home runs, lots of strikeouts. But Javi Baez in August had 4 less hits, 1 less home run, 4 less RBIs before he got hurt. And so
Right.
there's
They
just
might
not a
I
lot of
mean, they
good
might as
options
well
right now, which means Trey Sweeney could be a good option, which means he could get time,
might as
even
well
heading
let
into next
him
year.
yeah, might as well let him be out there
Mm-hmm.
because of, yeah, Baez's lack of production. But, I mean, if you look at his minor league stats, he never hit for an extremely high average, 240s, 250s, 260s, some power, some speed, but I guess a division winning team, like you said, that's an important major league player, having a utility guy like that, but not fantasy rosterable, most likely.
Here's what scares me and also intrigues me all at the same time, Nate. The New York Yankees drafted Trey Sweeney in the first round out of Eastern Illinois. And
Yeah,
after a few years, they trade him to the Dodgers. And after a year, less than a year, they trade him to the Tigers. Those are two of the organizations with some of the smartest reputation that you can get in the game. And both of them were intrigued at one point by Trey Sweeney. That's interesting. But both of them
yes.
at some point decided that he was movable. Whether that means they lost interest in him or just maybe that he wasn't at the level they thought they were, whatever the case may be, he became movable to these organizations with these very smart reputations.
And not much time, I mean, not even a full year in the Dodger system.
Right.
He was The Yankees sent him at the end of last year to the Dodgers, and then this year's trade deadline to your Tigers.
Right. So the question is, did both teams just hit the correct price tag, or do these smart organizations go, well, he's not going to be exactly what we need?
Yeah.
That's a terrible way to think about the game of baseball and fantasy baseball and all, but it's I think it's worth mentioning the organizations that both wanted him and then subsequently moved him. And I'm glad he's getting this chance with Detroit, and I hope that what he's doing lately is closer to what he's going to be as a professional. I mean, I'm a Tigers fan, so that would be awesome for that reason. I also I do like Trey Sweeney. I liked him as a prospect, so it'd be nice to see him stick and become a regular for the Tigers. But um, I think there's reasons to be cautious. Is the whole
Yeah.
point?
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, he was drafted in 2021 and he's on his third team in 3 years, basically what it, averages out. So, I guess we'll see. I wouldn't be scrambling to pick him up.
No, especially even you get the rest of the year, maybe. But as soon as Javier Baez is healthy, he's going to start taking at bats away because Javier Baez is a very expensive bench piece, and I don't think that's how the Tigers are going to roll, unless they're really going to commit to making the postseason, which would be awesome if they did. But
Yeah, that would be
you
cool.
very rarely see teams just put a high paid player on the bench and let them sit there.
And you'd think at one eventually maybe the Tigers would cut ties with Baez. I don't know what his contract situation is, but he has struggled. They'd have to eat some money, I'm sure.
Yeah, the that's one of the problems. I think. I mean, they have to eat a lot of money. The other thing is that he is signed through 2027.
Okay. Yeah.
So he opted in after last season, which means he's in Detroit making 24 to 25 million dollars a year until 2027.
Good for him
So
for
it's
opting
very
in.
unlikely that they very unlikely
Yeah.
that that they just cut him until those last maybe 1 or 2 years. I mean, unless they are, this is the playoff year. We need the free, like we need to just get him off the roster, or you attach like, I'm not even going to say it because I don't want it to happen. Never mind. Never mind.
Yeah. Okay.
Not even going to go that deep into it. You attach high level prospects. How about that? We'll leave it at that. Just
Fair.
so somebody maybe takes that contract, you still probably have to give money. It'd be an awful deal. So it's just, you're kind of stuck with Javier Baez for the time being. And hopefully, hey, you know what? Maybe he comes back next year and remembered the player he used to be that got him that contract. He says, hopefully, one more player that I want to bring up. Are you buying or selling their early performances? And that is, drumroll, Rhett Lauder with the Cincinnati Reds. Rhett Lauder, their first round pick in 2023, the seventh overall pick to be exact. He's 0-1 right now with the all important win loss stat, but he does have a .87 ERA, 10.1 innings pitched, 9 strikeouts, a 1.35 whip. So a pretty high whip, all things considered, but he's not giving up any runs. Rhett Lauder, are you buying?
Yes. This one seems easier, and the answer is yes. I am buying Rhett Lauder. This is a guy that does make me excited fantasy wise. Beautiful outing in his second outing. He got a quality start. He went a little bit longer. He had only pitched 4 innings in his debut. You mentioned the walks. That's an issue, but I think he is the real deal. And the rest of this season, he may get the 3 more starts or something like that. Um, Probably auditioning for being in the rotation next season, which I would expect he would start in that rotation next year. But yeah, he's a good player.
He is a big fan. I mean, obviously, the dedicated Coffee Talk listeners know what's up. I traded for him in the middle of recording an episode.
Live. This
Yeah,
would be now people could have seen it.
I
They could have
know.
seen the anguish in your face
Oh, we missed it.
trying
But
to
yes,
decide.
I obviously would love great things from Rhett Lauder. Let me just play devil's advocate here.
Okay.
The walk numbers are high, which means he's letting on a lot of base runners. And he calls Great American Ballpark home. So let me get nitpicky for a second. Are you worried about him giving up the wrong pitch at the wrong time, and all of a sudden, he's doing more to hurt you than help you, just because the bases are pretty busy.
Yeah, I mean that's a consideration. That's a good point. He may, I would think maybe his ERA and WHIP numbers might be affected, might be a little bit higher because of pitching there. But if he gets the strikeouts and if he gets run support, I think he could still get those wins. Depending on how your league's set up.
Mm-hmm.
And the Reds have some good players, but you're right. I think that is something to look at. And the
Not,
strikeouts are good, but the ratios that could hurt. I mean, he's walked 4 in each of his starts, and that's
I mean, it's
yeah,
nine
that's not great.
strikeouts, 8 walks through his first 10 innings, right? It could even out
It,
very quickly.
it could.
Um, and if you do heed my warnings and decide that Rhett Lauder is not a person you want to go after, let's all start a league together. I'm kidding.
No,
No,
I mean,
I'm just playing devil's advocate for no reason because we have to make some sort of conversation out of it. I actually totally agree with Nate. I am
out of those
in,
3, he's the one I think to be most excited about. The 3 we just
yeah,
talked about.
yeah. So I'm with Nate 100%. Like I'm buying Rhett Lauder. Great talent. It's going to be a fun rotation in Cincinnati between Hunter Green and Rhett Lauder and I mean Nick Lodolo when healthy. They got Carson Spears. They got a
Andrew
lot of fun.
Abbott,
They what?
Andrew Abbott,
Andrew
he's
Abbott,
got some
Graham Ashcraft.
shown some things. Yeah.
At one point, they had uh, Connor Phillips, who throws hard. That could be up and down a bullpen role. So they got some really fun things happening over in Cincinnati. We talked about their high octane arms. There's just some fun, really young rotations in baseball right now. Which Cincinnati, the Pirates, we talk about all the time with Skeens and Jared Jones at the top. It's
Mm,
just man.
yeah.
And we and with Cincy, we didn't even mention they just drafted another guy who can really pitch in. Oh my gosh, I was thinking Hagen Smith, but he went to the White Sox.
Who did they pick this year? And I was gonna go look.
Oh my gosh, this is why we shouldn't do this at the end of a day because I can't remember anything.
Chase Burns.
Chase Burns, thank you. That's what I was trying to think of. I was thinking
Yes.
Hagen Smith, but he went to the White Sox. But Chase Burns, another really, really good pitcher that they're adding to the fold. So Cincinnati pitching, man. I mean, it's not a friendly ballpark, but it's some friendly repertoires.
Yeah, and sounds like Reds fans were surprised. They were expecting a bat, but they got another arm. So yeah, good things though.
You
I
can never
think
have
for
enough of those.
years to come. That's right.
That's one of the craziest. Okay, just I've always thought this. That is one of the most insane things to say. You can never have enough arms. I don't know why I always thought it because it's so true. You can never have enough arms. It's crazy because you think at some point like you need roster spots for hitters. You have enough really good arms. You don't need to just stack them, but you can never have enough arms, and
No,
that's
it's.
called character development
I mean, you're definitely right. It's because pitchers get hurt all the time.
all the time.
Yeah,
And
that's a big part.
yeah, and if you have a lot of reliable arms, your team doesn't necessarily feel it. I think the Tigers over the last few years have really made that come to fruition in my mind. We all have bad takes sometimes. I'm just going to own mine. Um, but
The
everybody has gotten hurt, and they were still able to have
Yeah,
Bo Brisky, Alex Faedo, Sawyer Gibson Long. All these guys just come up and be valuable at the big league level. To a certain point. And one of those guys happened to be Reese Olson, who's turned into Reese Olson, which is awesome because I love Reese Olson. So, I mean,
you
it's
need
true.
and another thing, the way pitching or the way baseball has gone, being relievers are more valuable and more pitchers get into a game typically because the starter doesn't throw as long. You need more arms. And
Mhm.
so it makes sense you just keep stacking good arms and find a spot for them.
Absolutely. And Nate, what we're going to do right now is take a quick time out here on Coffee Talk. And we come back, we are going to get to my neck of the woods, which is prospects. I always love that part of our show, which admittedly is most of the show since I do the lead hosting and talking. I bring up prospects way too often, Nate, but that's okay. We're going
That's
to talk some
okay.
prospects coming up after a quick time out here on Coffee Talk on the Pitcher List Podcast Network, where we are always ready for that next cup of coffee. And welcome back to Coffee Talk on the Pitcher List Podcast Network. My name is Trevor Hooth. I'm joined by Nate Kosher. We've talked baseball. We've talked buying. Do you buy performances? Do you sell performances? We've talked some other things, some things that have happened, fun things. Now it's time to talk prospects. And there've been some significant post September 1st prospect call ups that have happened recently that Nate, I want to bring up to you. So let's start with the guy that we were clamoring for a week ago. And I think the team listened because they didn't want us to clamor about it again. But the Yankees have reportedly called up Jason Dominguez.
Yeah, like a week late, I think a little late or more than a week late, but it finally happened, and it should have happened sooner. So I'm glad. I'm glad that they made the call. I was going to just search here if the Yankees have played tonight, and if he got in.
Yeah. So
Uh,
they had a locker. He had a locker before their game with the Royals. Started in
okay.
center field, had a hit,
Yes,
scored a run on a throwing error in the fourth inning.
there it is. So I just saw two. He had four at bats. So good.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think that was. I don't know if the Yankees were trying to get too cute and not calling them up when it was expected, or I don't know what the deal was. They
Just
wanted
really
him to
loved Alex Verdugo.
uh, they wanted him to pay his dues in the minors. I don't know. Also, Aaron Judge has 126 runs batted in. Uh, I'm looking at the box score.
Is that
That's
it?
insane. It should be more with the number of home runs he has. Um,
I feel like my road to the show player has way more than that by this point in the year. So
but good. I mean, yeah, the Yankees fans should be excited, and another another stud for their lineup.
not a lot for us to say about Jason Dominguez that we haven't already said. It's good to see him up. Glad to see that situation got, I, for lack of a better term, fixed. I mean, it sucked that he was still in AAA. To be quite frank about it, and it's awesome to see him up, back up because again he had a cup of coffee last year. The more surprising one, Kumar Rocker is going to be coming up Thursday this week to make his MLB debut, and what a journey that dude has took. He
Yeah,
was uh, arguably the most well-known name in college baseball, and then he got drafted by the Mets, which didn't go through because of some medical stuff,
yep,
and then he uh, went to he played indie ball just to stay active, stay in baseball until the following draft, where he got drafted by the Rangers. In he was a first rounder, actually. It was surprising, I think, shocking first rounder by the Rangers that year, and now he's making his debut, and he has been one of the best pitchers throughout the minor leagues, if not the best pitcher in the minor leagues as of late. So it's a well earned promotion, Nate. But it was kind of shocking to me when I saw it, just because of the arc of his career, as I just described it. So are you excited about this, Nate?
yeah. It's weird. I don't think people expected it. And he it's already. It seems like he's been around forever, as you talked about with that long journey he's been on. He drafted twice in the first round. Um, he's undergone Tommy John surgery, and he's been around forever. It's cool, but I would be cautious. I would be cautious with it. He's 24 years old. He hasn't pitched a ton, but a few years back, he was looking like he was going to be under can't miss ace. So the last few years have kind of been a rocky up and down journey for him, I guess. But he's looked really good lately. Um, we'll see what he can do. People will be watching because he's still a name people are interested in. But I had sort of forgotten about him before this news hit.
Nate, I totally respect your tread lightly take when it comes to Kumar Rocker.
Yeah, I don't
Can
know.
I provide an opposing viewpoint?
You can.
Dive in face first as quickly as you can. I mean,
You
don't
think
even think
so?
about it, just go.
Okay.
Yes, and here's why. Um, I get the fragility. I understand. This dude was billed as basically MLB ready. He's another one of those guys who was like, "Hey, dude, he's MLB ready coming out of the draft. Like he could help your rotation soon." And I know he's had his setbacks. I get that. I want to shout out Lance Brzdowski on Twitter, and I'm sorry if I just absolutely botched your name, but you can find him at Lance Broz on Twitter. He works for um, um, Marquee Sports Network, and he posts some really interesting stuff. On Kumar Rocker today, he has a theory. The visual that Kumar Rocker creates on his slider makes it play up. According to Lance, models think it's above average to plus, but it's played in the plus to 80 range. 42% swinging strike rate at AAA, which, I mean, sample sizes, understand the sample size, right? I mean,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
but average is 16% and 20% is considered great. He was at 42 in this tiny sample. Um, 3/4 of the time hitters swung and missed. It's his slider is, according to Lance, ridiculous to start.
That's
And then
yeah.
there's deception on it that makes it even more ridiculous.
That's the
So
big pitch. That yeah.
especially Nate, if I could, especially with you saying we have 3 Mondays left, right? If I'm making a push for the playoffs and he's got that slider, I don't need his longevity right now. If we're talking redraft,
Good
I don't
point.
need the longevity.
That's a good point.
I need 3 weeks, or I need him right now. And so if he's going to be able to, in that small sample size, create the whiffs, get some distance, do whatever he needs to do, and be a productive member of my fantasy baseball rotation, I am diving in with all of my might.
He also the brief 3-week period end of the year here, he could definitely confuse some people with that slider, and people haven't seen him enough to catch up, and then the season's over. So yeah, I mean, I just the ups and downs I talked about that worries me a bit more. But he's been really hot lately,
Mhm.
and he's looked great. So we shall see.
See, we shall. I'm very excited. It's going to be awesome. I'm happy just for the store. He was so irrelevant for a minute there, and even I, well, admittedly, I was out there going, "Hey, I'm not going to touch Kumar Rocker. I have him in a dynasty league actually still, but um, I was the one saying, you don't really need. You could drop him in fantasy leagues, all that stuff. That was me.
Yeah, yeah. His
I
stock
was
went
wrong.
down for sure.
Yeah, and it's found its way back, which is awesome. Um, just again, really good to see. Another guy, Nate, I want to talk about before we end our podcast here. He probably should have been in the "Are you buying? Are you selling?" conversation, but we're going to go back to Detroit because I want to talk about Parker Meadows for a minute. Um,
Yeah,
the
the
Tigers are
Tigers.
500 in games where Parker Meadows starts. He's got an 849 OPS since August 3rd and a 901 OPS with runners in scoring position, and that includes a go-ahead opposite field grand slam that he hit in the ninth inning of a game against the Padres just a few days ago. He has become an electric factory. He has been probably the Tigers' best player as of late. It's been awesome to see. I can get real numbers here in a second. I was just reading stuff that I found on Twitter, but Parker Meadows has been fantastic. Nate, have you seen any of it? Is it something that you're interested in? Is he somebody that you're looking at?
The I saw the walk-off grand slam, which that doesn't happen very often, and That was pretty cool. That's actually what popped in to my news feed, and that's what I saw. He I know he had a cup of coffee last year, right? He had played in the majors, and there are definitely some things to like with him.
Mhm.
Um, I hadn't followed him much this season, and yeah, actually, just that the Grand Slam I saw, I was like, oh, that's interesting. Um, so I would say, I guess it's mildly exciting. You probably know more about him than me, but um, wait and see.
I'm kind of with you there. Despite all of the fun things he's been doing and all of the fun, explosive plays that have
The
happened, the highlights,
yeah,
I should say, he's
yeah.
still hitting 233 over his last 7 games. He's hitting 254 over his last 15. Um, a pair of home runs, hasn't stolen a base, so he's not putting up the counting stats I think that you would want to see. He's a lot of fun to watch as a Tigers fan. He does have the potential to steal bases and probably hit for a teensy bit of power, but he's been a fun development as a prospect. He was another guy who I mean I had completely given up on when he was in West Michigan's high A for like the third year in a row. I was like, all right, man, like this was just not a great pick. And all of a sudden he exploded and it's been fantastic. And I love it. And it's so much fun and so awesome for Parker Meadows. And I hope great things for him. But I don't think that that's going to be on my fantasy team, at least to end this year in a redraft league. I do roster him in dynasty leagues still, just on the off chance. But he's not somebody I'm betting on in those leagues. All right. Last thing, Nate.
Yes.
I am going to give you 3 players who just got promoted to double A, I believe all of them. Or no, 2 players got promoted to double A, one prospect who did something really cool. And I want you to tell me which one interests you most because none of these guys aren't going to debut this year. Anything.
Okay.
Okay. So the first is going to be from the Twins organization, Emmanuel Rodriguez. Hidden inside the park grand slam. He is playing at the AAA level at the age of 21. Also from the Twins, Walker Jenkins gets promoted to Double A.
Yep.
And then from the Rangers, Sebastian Walcott gets promoted to Double A. And Sebastian Walcott is still 18 years old.
Whew. That's crazy.
3 very interesting bits of information from the minors from well known prospects. But does
Yeah.
one of them stand out to you or interest you more than the others? There's a very
Um,
clear winner to me, but it's not for any logical reason.
yeah, so just my gut reaction, I'm gonna say Walker Jenkins.
Mm.
I would be most excited out of those three. Bumping him or him getting bumped up to double A. It's cool to see. I know the Twins think very highly of him and he has some 5 tool potential. Uh he's more exciting to me than Emmanuel Rodriguez. If you're looking at the 2 guys from the Twins, Jenkins probably next year, as you said, now at double A, if he continues his strong play next year, then I could see him going to the majors. But that would be the guy that jumps out to me as the most ready. He can also can hit for power. Um, Walcott he's exciting because I guess the the potential ceiling is there, and he's so young. If he gets bigger, stronger, I could see good things. But right now, more complete player, I will say Jenkins. Everything put together. Is
Yeah, I
that
mean
who you
Jenkins
were
is the.
thinking?
I mean, no, mine was Sebastian Walcott, but I'll explain that in a second. Um,
Okay.
I agree. Jenkins is probably the most exciting of those 3 because Jenkins is probably the best player of those 3. Um, I mean, of the people that I've talked to, who's Jenkins is, they love him. It's just, there's no way around it. Like, I am all in on Jenkins. He's a phenomenal player. I've heard nothing but great things. And so that is probably the most exciting one. I, as a prospect nerd, am extremely interested in Sebastian Walcott going to Double A. Here's the thing. Sebastian Walcott, as I mentioned, is still 18 years old, and he will not turn 19 until March. So he's going to be 18 for the rest of this season. He
that's
won't turn 19
wild.
until just before next year. He's listed at 6'4", 190 right now as an 18-year-old. In high A, he hit 261 with 26 steals and 10 home runs. Which, and don't get me wrong, 125 strikeouts in 116 games. So a lot of swing and miss there. Not going to pretend it's not there, but he is doing such phenomenal things right now. When you think of age to level, that
Yeah,
I am
right.
extremely interested in how he does at Double A. I don't think that's because he'll debut, next year or anything like that. But I do think that it is very interesting that he's being promoted to Double A. I think it's phenomenal that he's been playing so well. And the age to level thing is important to take into account. I mean, through 271 plate appearances in just single A as an 18-year-old, Jackson Churio had a 28% strikeout rate. Now, by the time he got to Double A as a 19-year-old in 2023, that was down to 18.4. But the point is that when you are that young for the level, if you're performing whatever you're doing well, that is amplified more so than the things that are going wrong for you. And age to
Yes.
level gets talked about quite a bit. And I think that from my point of view, it's the younger guys for the level that the age to level really matters for. The older guys for the level, you can still parse out some of the baseball ability there. Like when I first saw Yasser Zulueta, he was doing a rehab stint as a 24-year-old, roughly. Maybe he's 23, 22, whatever. But he was doing that in low A. But like he was throwing 100 with a really nice slider. And now he's a rotation or a bullpen guy for the Reds. But to me, that younger age to higher level says more to me than older age to lower level, because development's not a straight line. So just saying that a dude who's
Yeah.
going to be 18 until March in Double A is awesome.
I mean, the physical, he probably has the most impressive physical tools, being that he's only 18.
Mhm.
I would have actually expected him, even though he's only 18, to even have more home runs in 116 games, just because of that power. Still needs to develop, like you said, the strikeouts. But if he fills out with that frame, yeah, he could be a monster fantasy wise. Super young still, and we'll see how he does these last few weeks. But he's probably
For the record, it was a 25.5 strikeout percentage at the level. I mean, at
okay.
high A. I mean, you're not looking at a guy with 30% strikeouts or anything.
Yeah,
It's
I mean
still not great, but it's not like
it's
he's
not
being
the
blown away
worst. Yeah, right, exactly. He's definitely holding his own.
with a 10.6% walk. Just throwing that out there.
And yeah, his numbers overall are pretty good. So
Mm-hmm.
this is a guy to keep an eye on for
I don't know
sure.
about for next year. I really don't, but I do
No,
think
no,
that he's a name
down
to
the road,
know. It's just a lot of
dynasty
fun.
wise.
Yeah, it's just a lot of fun. Either way, Nate, that's going to put a bow on episode 25 of Coffee Talk. Always appreciate getting to talk to you. And maybe our listeners now will appreciate getting to see our faces.
We
I
will
just gave
see.
a thumbs up for those of you who are listening on a podcast traditionally. Anyway, we appreciate you listening, and make sure to like, subscribe, share, all that fun stuff. Help us grow our wonderful audience. Always appreciate you. For Nate Kosher, my name is Trevor Hooth, and this has been another episode of Coffee Talk on the Pitcher List Podcast Network, where we are always ready for that next cup of coffee.